Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. Welcome to Team List Wednesday, the inaugural Team List Wednesday. It's been a crazy day. By my count, 13 SuperCoach players are either out, in doubt, or have copped some sort of blow in today's teams. It's going to be a rough week, and joining me, I've got Kane Anderson from the SuperCoach Hub. How are you, mate?
I'm going well, mate. Thanks for the call back. I'm not looking too bad. There's been a few players out here and there, but I've managed to get a team on the park, and with trades in hand, I should hopefully hold rank rather than increase rank.
Right. Well, I haven't been as lucky as you. Looking at my team now, I've just managed to slide in for 17, but that does include players like Sonny Luke, Davey Moale's in there, Stefano Otokamanu. I've got Isaiah Katoa all in that 17. So it's going to be a rough week. There are going to be plenty of... That's before trades, by the way. So I should be able to pull it into shape somewhat. But in any case, it's been a rough day. Have you made any trades yet?
I've got one penciled in, which is Christian Welch to Tapani.
Yep.
Pending how my mind goes over the next 24 hours, that might change. I might have to prioritise another position or something, but we'll see how we go.
Yep, as I mentioned, 13 SuperCoach players have copped some sort of blow today. We'll run through the winners now, and we'll get to those 13 losers in a sec. First on the winners list, Jared Croker. Good to see that he has retained his spot there at the Raiders, even with Jordan Rapana back into that team, and there's no Xavier Savage. So maybe his job security issues aren't completely solved, but I think he is a safe purchase to bring in this week, and people who've got on over the last couple of weeks are vindicated.
Yeah, well, he looks like one of the better buys for this week, being named. I saw a report about Savage potentially not wanting to go straight into full contact after his jaw injury, so going through reserve grade, playing on the wing and that sort of thing. So just he's probably still a couple of weeks away. So we should get a couple of games from Croker. Hopefully he's there for round 13 as an extra buy number. And I was going to save a trade last week, but with all the players dropping like flies, I ended up doing a late trade-in of Croker, so I'm quite happy to see him named.
Very nice, yeah. He'll be in my team as of this week. Send through your questions on Facebook or YouTube, guys. None sitting in there at the moment, so please send them through and we'll get to them in a sec. Next up on the winners list, Hayes Dunster. So we called Trap, most people were calling Trap on him last week, and he did drop out of that team for Bailey Simonson. So our predictions were correct, but then unfortunately for Bailey Simonson, he's copped a concussion. He's out this week. That means Dunster comes back into that back line. Would you purchase him this week?
It would depend. I think Croker's probably the better pick for this week. Again, Dunster's job security is not great because we've got Simonson's going to be coming back at some point. He's also doesn't have a low break even. So it's not one that is a priority buy for this week. I personally am not going to be purchasing him this week. We'll see how he goes, see how his job security goes. He has a great game, holds his spot. He's a decent pickup for next week.
Harrison Southam is on the chat on Facebook saying Sanks' Paradise has a few headaches this week. Coach Tom is wishing he had a bye this week, and that is absolutely correct. Haven't even mentioned the guys on the bye yet. You've got the Storm on the bye, so Harry Grant, Cameron Munster are the really popular ones. But you've got Christian Welch, Eli Katoa, who also picked up a concussion. It's a rough week, that's for sure. We've got a question, who's the best cover for Turbo? Now, I'm saying James Tedesco probably is the best. He's bottomed out in price and returned to a bit of form yesterday. But the cheap guy, if you want to free up a bit of cash, is Kalen Ponga. I think he's the roughie. What are your thoughts?
Ponga scares me. I just can't bring myself to go down the Ponga path. It's just been too many times that he's gone down. In terms of Tedesco, I'm happy for people to go and buy Tedesco. Pedigree. He's just got the pedigree. As much as he's had a rough start, he has in the last few years started relatively slow and come home pretty strong. My issue with Tedesco is the fact that Origin's coming up and he's probably a sell over that period. So you'd be only looking at him for a 4 or 5 week period. I'd be looking at the matchups pretty closely and making sure that's where you wanted to go. Otherwise, there's a few other potential cheaper options maybe that you could go like I've got my eyes on guys like Sloan, who's got a big negative break even, and Alex Johnston by swinging Garrick into fullback or something like that.
Yep, good calls. Brendan is asking, Tommy Turbo named, but will he play? Look, he has to be in massive doubt. Surely they don't take any risks with Tommy Turbo given his injury history. What have we got here? Ellie Katoa to Josh Curran. So I guess with all the injuries there at the Warriors, particularly the Tohu injury, and Bailey Sirenen's probably in a bit of doubt as well with the concussion, plus Jazz Tavanga going down, so potentially 3 big forward injuries. Curran could build up his minutes a bit.
Yeah, I don't mind the Curran shout. I don't think he's got a super low break even at the moment, but he's only 512k. So if Tohu's gone for an extended period and he can hold that lock position, we know in the past that he can score well for SuperCoach and plays big minutes at times as well. So, yeah, I don't mind it. It would all depend on Tohu's recovery time for me.
Moving back onto the winners list, Nathan Cleary I'll go to first. So he has been named. There is some chat from not floating around on Twitter. I wouldn't say it's from strong sources saying that Cleary could be rested this week. And they've certainly pulled a bunch of guys out of New South Wales Cup. He is carrying a groin injury. He didn't kick last week. And they're playing the Tigers. I mean, let's face it, they're going to walk in against the Tigers. So there are a few things adding up here that could suggest that Nathan Cleary will be rested this week. As it stands now, he has been named. It looks like he will be starting, but we'll be chasing that for late mail. So I've got him on the winners list for now. If he plays, would you be putting the C on him? It's a really good matchup against the Tigers, but also pretty late in the round.
He also gave up goal kicking to Crichton last week, so that's another little nudge downwards for him. But I wouldn't be putting the C or VC on him at the moment because Nicho Hynes is outplaying him at the moment and they're in the same position. So you can only put it on one of them. And with Cleary having an injury cloud, I'll be going through the Hynes path for sure.
Interested to hear your thoughts on Jareen Buller, who debuted on the weekend, 21 runs, a bunch of tackle busts, looked great for SuperCoach. Obviously, the issue is that he plays for the Tigers and they're not going to score many points. But the biggest issue is the fact that he's only available at fullback. And can you fit in a cheapie in that position, given it's the top scoring position for SuperCoach?
It's a hard one. It's a hard one to fit in there. The Tigers factor and the fact that they change their team all the time as well. You do not want to get stuck having a 250k fullback that's been dropped and isn't getting any more game time, and you can't trade him to anyone because he's too cheap. That would just be a disaster for me. So that's something that I'm not even looking at.
We're getting a lot of questions about forward cheapies this week. What are your thoughts on Toe Sipley from Manly, and Wiramu Greg and Hame Sele? They're the 3 guys who are popping up. I haven't been able to look too deeply into it, but one thing I can tell you is Wiramu Greg is a lot cheaper than the other 2 guys. The other guys are mid-range cheapies. Mid-rangers, really, not even mid-range cheapies.
Yeah, well, Totola's also back, which impacts Sele's minutes there as well. To be honest, in the front row, I just want to get my starting front row sorted for long term, and then I just don't want to do anything else there and just leave it be. So getting guys like Sele and those other 2 you named there, it's just not on my radar. Toff, I just can't get around Toff in general. A bit of a plotter.
Yeah, no worries. Moving on to, I promised it at the start of the show, on to the losers. I mentioned there's 13 blokes who've copped some sort of issue this week in the teams. Let's start with Josh Schuster, out. The word from Manly is that he's been giving more time to condition himself with that quad injury. So it looks like it's going to be a recurring thing for him. Unfortunately, he's owned by 70,000 SuperCoaches, and he was looming as a potential play this week up against the Tigers, but Titans at home. But yeah, I mean, this is it just goes from bad to worse for Josh Schuster.
It is, but look, we really just wanted to buy him because he was cheap and he was going to be a number for round 13. So as long as he's back for round 13 and can start going up in price again for a sell after that round, then it's all fine. I'm not too concerned about it.
Tom Trbojevic, look, I've got him on the losers list, but he has been named, so I'll point that out firstly. Got to be in huge doubt, though, and for me, he is a sell. Let's say I think he will miss at least 1 week. It could be 2, and then you basically have Origin. So if he's fit, he's a massive chance to play Origin. You might get 2 weeks out of him before Origin. Hasn't been setting the world on fire as it is anyway, so a definite sell for me. You've got a fair bit of cash to play with to go to someone like Teddy. You could go up to someone like the Knights fullback, Lachlan Miller. You could free up some cash by going Ponga or even way down to Jareen Buller. You've got plenty of options there.
Yeah, there's quite a few options there. In terms of Tom, I think it's going to be, with the fact that we've got a lot of players out this week, if you get a green arrow for Tom and he's actually playing and you're pretty limited, then you probably just hold on to him and deal with other issues. But yeah, if you've got the luxury to be able to go and do a fullback trade, and like I said before, use a dual position guy to go and switch to a gun centre wing that you prefer to the fullback options, then that's another option for you.
Prop is a really tough position this week because you've got Tohu Harris out with that knee injury. Looks like he'll be out for a fair while as well. He didn't look great yesterday. Then you've got Payne Haas out suspended, Christian Welsh on the bye. So 3 of the most popular props are out. There are super coaches out there who unfortunately have all 3 of them. I've got 2 of them, so it looks like I'll have to sell one of them, probably to Tapane, or if I can switch the right jewels, I might go Madison. But big blows for those 3 fellas.
Yeah, definitely big blows. Front row's always a bit of an issue position you don't want to waste trades on, and having weeks like this where you've got multiple players out all at once. Yeah, I think Tohu's probably a sell because we just don't know how long he's going to be gone for this time. It's the same injury. It doesn't necessarily need to be that major of an injury for it to last quite a few weeks. And then how does he come back? Payne Haas, you'd not be moving him on at all just because he's so much better than everyone else. And that was a rubbish suspension from my eyes anyway.
I 100% agree with you. I don't quite understand how you can do a hip drop tackle when it's a one-on-one tackle. I think it was always made for like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, here it is there. He's on his own try line. He has to do absolutely anything to stop that try.
But Campbell Geller was already on the ground.
Yeah.
So the whole point of the hip drop is that you're dropping onto the lower leg while they're standing up. Like, he was already down and he landed on his upper leg. Like, I can't believe they didn't try and fight it.
Yep, I'm with you on that one 100%. Ruben Garrick, very popular Supercoach player, has been killing it on the wing outside Turbo and to a lesser extent Schuster, but moves to the centres this week. I don't like this move at all, but I can't do anything about it because we've got way too many issues elsewhere.
Definitely. Yeah, look, we don't really know though. We don't know what Garrick's going to do at centre. He's a good player and he's going to get more tackles in that position. Yeah, he's probably not going to score as many tries, but does he get a couple of assists now playing in that centre position? Does he get a little bit more involved going into the middle of the field to help Tom? Who knows? I'm happy to wait and watch, and he's got a big break even, but he's someone that I want to keep there long term anyway, so I'm happy to leave him.
Good question coming through from Bronson. He is asking, should I play Mitch Kenny or trade Grant? So, look, I have Grant, and I'm in a similar situation where I've got Sonny Luke as my backup. I think I'm just going to take the hit on Sonny Luke. Grant, even though he's on the bye, showed yesterday just how good he can be with that ton, match-winning or match-clinching play. I know Origin is coming up, but we've still got 3 games to come from Harry Grant between now and then, so I'm definitely holding. When we get to 13, I'll make my decision then, but he could potentially get traded to Jeremy Marshall-King at that point. Given that Damien Cook, with his form, he probably plays Origin too, so the top couple of guys in that position are both out through Origin.
Yeah, I wouldn't be selling Harry. He's in a position where there's not a whole lot of options there, and he's at the top of them. So 1 week off, yes, we're going to cop a Sonny Luke or Mitch Kenny in that situation. Mitch Kenny's actually been not too bad. It's averaging 45 or something off the top of my head. But yeah, look, you can cop that hit for the week, as most other people will be. So, yeah.
Interesting chat with Joey Manu. So after the game yesterday, Trent Robinson refused to guarantee that he would stick with that halves combination, even though Luke Keary, moving to halfback, got man of the match. Manu was pretty damn good too, with a try, a whole bunch of tackle busts, and 13 runs, which is very high for a 5'8". So I was quite impressed, SuperCoach-wise, by Manu. But then the coach came out afterwards and said, look, Sam Walker could easily come back into that team, and the shift that they would make would be Manu moving back into the centres, which would, because Daniel Tupu's out, he'd move back into the back line. So hopefully that doesn't happen. I think Manu and Keary both did enough to retain that spot, but we'll see what happens. Trent Robinson could pull anything in the final teams.
Yes, well, as super coaches, we all obviously want Manu to stay in the 5'8" position just because he gets his hands on the ball so much more. And he doesn't like to pass, so he always gets a hit up every time he touches it. So that's always a win. And to the point where he almost bombed a try with the one that he did score. He had two players outside him in the open and took it himself, but happy he did. But yeah. I don't think Trent would have been impressed.
No, absolutely not. And Sam Walker, by reports, had an okay game in New South Wales Cup, but it was a pretty frustrating one. A pretty frustrating game where they got out to a lead and then ended up losing that clash. So it's not like he is absolutely hammering down the door to get back into first grade. Sunia Taruva, I think, is a sell anyway, but he is in doubt. Interestingly there, Isaac Tungo is out as well. I was hoping that would mean that a cheapie would come in Tom Jenkins or Jesse McLean. That hasn't happened. They've gone with the veteran Tyrone Peachy, but Jenkins is on the extended bench. So keep an eye on that. I was hoping for a cheapie. It hasn't quite happened. In any case, what are you thinking of doing with Taruva?
At the moment, because he's playing and it's against the Tigers, I'm going to hold on. His break-even's not massive, so he could easily jag a try or two this weekend. Having Peachy inside him does scare me a little bit because he's traditionally, again, a guy that doesn't like to pass very much. So that's a little bit problematic. But, against the Tigers, hopefully he can get some points there and get another little price rise series going.
Yep, absolutely. And I've mentioned it, Harry Grant and Cameron Munster, both on the bye. I'd be holding both of those guys. And then you've got a whole bunch of other Storm guys who are popular, who I think are potential sells. William Warbrick has peaked. I think he can easily go to Croker. That'll probably be the most popular trade this week. And then you've got Eli Katoa as well, who copped a concussion on the weekend, popular sell, and Christian Welch too, who you're selling too.
Yeah, I think they're all quite easily sells. Eli Katoa, he's had a concussion on the weekend, so he's going to miss. Well, they've got a bye next week anyway, so we don't know how he's going to recover from that. So whether he's back for the next game on Magic Round or not, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, he's starting to drop in cash now and would be a good player to move on. Christian Welch is super consistent. I didn't really want to move him on. I would have preferred to sell Stefano this week to get an upgrade, but with Payne Haas dropping out, that means that I've had to move on Welch and play Stefano this week. But yeah, in terms of Warbrick as well, I sold Warbrick last week at the last minute to get Croker in, but yeah, he's starting to drop. He's peaked. He can easily go this week.
Right, we've got some questions coming through. D is asking, best number sixes going forward. Can we trust Cody Walker this year? Look, for me, the guy, well, I wish I owned Munster. Well, not this week, given he's on the bye, but he's the top guy in that position. Then next for me, because of his bye coverage, is Dylan Brown, and then I've got Cody Walker just under that. Who are you? What are you thinking of going with at 6 as we go into the byes?
I think that the goal has been Dylan Brown for quite a while. It's just a matter of when I can do it. And at the moment, I've got Schuster and Isaiah Katoa sitting there. So I can move a 2RF, but at the moment, do I move a 2RF out now that he's playing on a week like this when I can try and potentially do something else for a guy that's not playing and bolster my 17? So, yeah, it's a bit of a balancing act at the moment. But, yeah, Brown will be the target closer to 13.
Moving on to the buy list, any love for Lockie Miller? He's expensive, but a lot of people are looking to sell Turbo.
I do like Lockie Miller. I started with him and unfortunately sold him after the first 2 games where he got 250s with some attacking stats, and it's just like, I've got to get some money out of someone. So I downgraded him for, I think it was Hammer at the time, who then shot up in price, and I've sold Hammer since. But yeah, Lockie's gone crazy ever since I sold him, and it's been a bitter pill to swallow every week watching him play.
Some questions coming through about Angus Crichton, I assume. He's back to the bench this week with Nat Butcher back into that team. So definitely not a SuperCoach option for now, but given his history in the game, he's one of those guys to keep an eye on. Ryan Madison, I want to chat about him. I have him as the number one buy heading into this round 13 buy. What are your thoughts on him? I just think he's solid as mid-70s average. The low score was on the weekend. I think it was 59. It may have changed
59, I think, yeah.
Lately. And then obviously you've got the upside with the attack. It's just solid as. I don't think he's going to play Origin and covers those buys.
I've always been a big Maddo fan, and it's a matter of, again, when can I get him in? Who do I sell it for? I almost sold Murray for him last week. It was one of the things that I was tossing up. I almost sold Reece Walsh for Teddy last week. So there are a few of those sort of trades that I've considered. But Maddo, he's super consistent, always been a big fan. I am concerned that if he keeps up really good form, that he could sneak into that Origin bench spot again. He did play there for a game last year, so he's definitely not out of all the realms of playing there. But I'll probably wait closer to 13 to see just what the latest is with the Origin squads before I bring him in, I think.
Yeah, same with me. I haven't seen his BE this week because lockout only just finished. I would say it's not particularly high. I'd say it's in about the 40s. I don't think he's going to go up by a massive amount of money. Let's run through each of the games. Sharkies v the Cowboys. At the Sharks, no changes, thankfully. I think they're probably the only team with no changes this week. Nicho Hines, playing in the first game of the round. VC option for sure, or would you even go captaincy straight up on Nicho up against the Cowboys at PointsBet Stadium? So home game for the Sharkies. I'm tempted by the straight C, but also with numbers so short this week, it actually could get a genuine crack at the VC loophole.
Yeah. Either way, I think if anyone is a straight up C on Thursday night at the moment, it's Nicho. He's just not doing much at all and cracking out hundreds. It's craziness. But like you said, with numbers short this week, it seems like it could be a fairly free loop with some people having to play guys like Mawali's and Murdoch Masillas and these sort of guys who would likely be your AE score anyway. It's probably a pretty easy option to just go with the VC this week and use a loop.
Yep, 100% agree. Who's standing out for you there at the Sharkies?
Obviously, Britton Nakora is killing it this season. Unfortunately, he's $745K now, which is kind of out of the price range, but he's been a gun. He's running his good lines, just getting that attacking stat every week and just playing good footy. I like it. Another guy is Sione Katoa, is pretty cheap at the moment for his output. He's only $501K, which is a pretty good price for a try scorer in a team that's going to put on pretty good points for most of the year, you would think. So they're two guys that are kind of on my radar, but not able to get at the moment.
At the Cows, no changes for them as well. Val Holmes finally cracked a ton out over the weekend. Good to see from him. Tough matchups coming up, though, and Origin coming. I actually sold him last week, but it was to Manu. So it didn't cost me too much because I sold him to Manu. But look, in any case, I think you're probably going to want to get rid of him before round 13. Who's standing out for you here?
Yeah, well, in terms of Val, I still have Val, and I will be looking to sell him come round 13 for some coverage there. But I'm quite happy to see that 100 and hopefully get another little booster in price before I do get to sell him. Obviously, Drinkwater is an option that pops up in little runs. I've had him over the last couple of years for little stints here and there, and if you can catch him on those little runs where he jags 300s out of 4 games or something like that, he can be pretty good value. He's at 628K, which is a little bit above where guys like Turbo are at the moment, and they do play that first buy, so it's an interesting option. A little bit risky for me though.
Eels v the Knights at CommBank Stadium. Eels are a hot Supercoach team right now because, well, they had a pretty tough start to the season, and then they are the number one team to cover that round 13 bye. So good to see Jermaine Hopgood back into the starting team, by the way. Wiramu Greg is a guy who I've got my eye on as a cheapie. He comes in for RCG. And, of course, Dunster is into that team, probably just for 1 week with Simonson out with that concussion. Having said that, Simonson has had 4 concussions in the last 2.5 years, so there is the chance that he gets stood down for a little bit longer and we get to see a little bit more of Hayes Dunster. Wiramu Greg could be a guy who comes into my team. I think he's the best sort of close to bottom dollar front row cheapie.
What's his price at the moment?
Oh, I haven't seen after lockout, but it was $230 before.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, that's not too bad. But like I said, using 233.9. So, yeah, it's one of those ones where I don't want to use too many trades in the front row.
Yep.
If he's got that starting position pretty well locked down, unless they move like Maddo into the middle rotation and leave Hopgood at lock. I don't know that they'll necessarily do that, but
it's a last resort cheapie, put it that way. I'm not particularly keen on it.
Exactly.
I might have to do it.
Yeah. If you need to get someone on the field and you need to do a downgrade from a Welch to fund something else, then yeah, it's not the worst idea. I think it's one of those situations where if you've already got 2 duds on your front row bench, then it's not an option.
Yeah. I'm with you there. Who's standing out for you at the Eels?
Mostly just that Dunster on the wing situation. That's the big thing for me looking forward, is just to make sure that he gets that spot, that he's actually going to have some output, because that first game, 7 points, was a bit of a stinker. In terms of that, I'm just going to be, again, waiting.
Yep. Clint Gutherson is a guy who I've got on a pretty long list of buys for round 13. Moving on to the Broncos v the Rabbitohs. I think the big one here is Reece Walsh. And with all these injuries, can you afford to sell him? Because I think he's done his best work this year, averaged almost a ton over the start of the season. But this is where their run gets really, really tough. They're basically playing the 4 best teams in the comp between now and Origin. So I'm expecting Walsh, with his poor base, to really come back to the pack. So ideally, he's a sell. You might not be able to do that this week with all the injuries.
Exactly right. I think that it's a situation where, in an ideal world, you'd go and be trading him straight to a Latrell or something like that, and just riding the fact that you could do that fairly cheaply without costing too much, or even sell him down to a Tedesco and earning $250K in the process or something like that, which is crazy. But with the low numbers in teams at the moment, I think that he'll end up being held by most. And there's also the fact that if he misses Origin, then he can be a buyer number as well. Yeah,
that's a good call. And I guess that does hinge a fair bit on Kalen Ponga and how he returns from his injury. Moving on to the Rabbitohs, there's a lot to like here. They cover that first bye. Campbell Graham's the guy. I mention him every week, and he's so expensive, but he is the guy who I really want to get in for that round 13. But he could easily play Origin too, particularly with Turbo under a little bit of a cloud. You'd think Campbell Graham could be the next cab off the rank there.
Oh, I lost you there for a minute.
I was just saying that Campbell Graham could easily play Origin with this injury cloud over Turbo.
Yeah, he's not necessarily on my radar for that reason. I think he's a good option to play Origin this year. I'm more looking at someone like AJ, Alex Johnston, who basically, if Latrell's going well, Alex Johnston's going well. And he goes through, similar to Drinkwater, he'll go through a run where he scores 300s in 4 games, and they can be big hundreds as well. They can be 150s. It's just a matter of catching the time. And the fact that he's not going to play Origin either is another little extra through that bye period. And yeah, someone who can have a high ceiling through the bye period is always a good option.
I mentioned before, but the big team news there is that Totola is starting, and Hame Sele, who was on my radar as a bit of a moneymaker, goes back to the bench. So I might have to put a line through him. Raiders v the Dolphins. At the Raiders, the big news Supercoach-wise is that Croker has retained his spot, even with Rapana back into that team. The guy to mention here is obviously Joe Tapine, the most purchased player this week. Makes absolute sense given that Tohu Harris is out and Payne Haas and Welsh all these gun props are out. So I think Tapane is the next best option in that position. He's got the dual positioning, and he's only just scratched the surface this year. I reckon he's got some big attacking stats coming, and he's as consistent as they come. The low score and the high score are divided by about 10 points.
Yeah, exactly right. The consistency of him's been really great, and he's not really done much at all. So we know that he's got attacking plays in him. We know that he can score a try. We know he can set up a try. We know he's got a good offload. So all of these things are going to come out at some point, and I think that he'll be up there in the top couple of props for the year, which makes him a great option for round 13, which puts him ahead of guys like Tino, who might outscore him on an average, but in terms of the games played, Tapane will outdo him on the total points.
And at the Dolphins, good to see Connolly Lemuelu retains his starting back row spot. Even with Kenny Bromwich back, Bromwich is starting a prop, which is interesting. Anyone standing out for you at the Dolphins?
The only guy I really have on my radar for the Dolphins is Marshall King, and that'll be, again, another one that's closer to the bye rounds. If I sell Harry Grant, then it'll be to Marshall King to cover that round 13. And another issue that's kind of cropping up a little bit is that people are kind of focusing a bit too much on 13 and not on 14. So I've been looking more at the teams that play both of those rounds rather than just the ones that play 13, because I think round 14 is going to be absolute bedlam.
Yeah, it's going to sneak up on a few people, that's for sure. I think there's 4 teams on the bye, plus Origin players backing up. Milford has been named in reserves, so they're going to ease him back through the lower grades, which is obviously great news for Katoa, even though Katoa would be in that team anyway. Sea Eagles v the Titans. So the big news on 3 SuperCoach guys. Turbo named, Garrick goes to centre, and Schuster is out. And then Toff Sipley is a pretty popular purchase this week. I'm saying it's a bit risky, and so are you.
Yeah, I'm not keen on Toff, but yeah, it's all to do with Turbo, Garrick. Obviously, Schuster's out as well, which, like I said before, I'm not too concerned about at this point. I just need him as a number in round 13. But yeah, we need Turbo to play. If he's not going to play, then I think he's definitely a sell option. But like I said, if we've got low numbers and Turbo's playing, then I'll probably have to hold on.
At the Titans, there's a little positional switch there with Jojo Fafita to centre, Philip Sammy to the wing. SuperCoach-wise, there's not a great deal standing out for me. If you still owned AK, do you still own AKP? And are you holding?
I do, and I played him this week, unfortunately. Right. The first time I played him since round 1, I think. Just, oh dear. Against my Dolphins, that edge defence hadn't been great the last couple of games, and no, he pulled out a stinker, and I copped an 18 or 21 or something.
Well, defence was hardly good over the weekend either, but they somehow scratched.
Just didn't go to there.
Win. Yeah.
As much as it was against my Dolphins, the David Fafita try assist to an AKP try that was disallowed did sting me a little bit.
Moving on, Panthers v the Tigers. So there is some chat around that Panthers could rest some guys, including Nathan Cleary, but he has been named for now. Taruva named. There's a watch on Tom Jenkins, so he is the centre who could come in for Peachy, potentially. Otherwise, Sonny Luke is going to be in a lot of 17s this week. Who are you looking at out of the Panthers?
Yeah, I've got my eyes definitely on Taruva to see whether he plays or not. If he plays, he'll be in my 17 for sure, based on the matchup itself. Not too much else really going on there in terms of SuperCoach for me, other than just the fact that like Peachy's there and doesn't like to pass at all, and that does concern me for Taruva. But if Taruva's there, then I'll have to play him. I do have Croker and AKP still on my bench, not in my 17 at the moment, who can replace Taruva if I need to.
My original plan before all the carnage this weekend was actually to sell Hosking, given that he dropped from 80 minutes. But that won't be happening with all the injuries, so he'll be in my 17 and hopefully back to 80 minutes this week. At the Tigers, not for Luma back, but I don't think there's too much to like there. Warriors v the Roosters. Warriors are just decimated. Tohu, gone. Charles Nickel-Clockstad, gone. Jazz Tavanga, gone. Bailey Sirenen copped a concussion on the weekend and didn't have enough time to return, so we don't know quite where he is at. in any case, a lot of people will be selling Tohu and Chance. There's also a lot of opportunities with all these guys out, and Adam Finlay-Blake is the guy who a lot of people are looking at.
He's been a beast. I know a couple of people like Savs, I'm pretty sure, has AFB, and it's just painful watching AFB just carve up when he's not done anything like this for the last few years. He's been fairly average, but yeah, lately he's been killing it, and it's just one of those ones where, again, front row, I don't really want to do much, particularly since the Warriors have another bye before the round 13 bye round, so I don't want to be bringing in too many Warriors players at this point and then getting caught that week. So, yeah, that's one that I'll be avoiding at the moment. But, yeah, good on him for smacking teams around a bit. One guy that I've been keeping a little eye on here is Volkman, who is only halfback, but he's a chance of coming in to play 5/8 when Dylan Walker gets suspended.
When? Yeah.
So, assuming Walker gets suspended, Volkman could come in to 5/8, and that becomes an interesting option at 250k. He's only halfback at the moment, but 3 games between now and round 12 will potentially get him a dual position, which will be handy to have a 5/8 option for the bye there.
Yep, absolutely. And speaking of dual positions, you need 3 games starting in that position. So Joey Manu, if he does keep that spot, will definitely get one for that round 12 when the new positions come in. So onto the Roosters. Daniel Tupou is the big injury. So currently they've got Corey Allen on the wing, but there is some chat, particularly around the office this morning, that Walker could come back. Manu goes back into the back line and they really pump up that back line there. I don't know if it's going to happen, and this game happens on the Sunday, second last game of the round. So we won't know before we have to make our big decisions, unfortunately. Manu's really popular again. Would you be going him knowing what we know and what Trent Robinson said in that press conference yesterday?
I think it would be a hard buy this week. I think his break-even's still relatively up there. Yeah, that's a hard one. Like, we know that he's a gun player. We do want him to be in the 5/8 position, though. So if he loses that 5/8 position late, that's going to be a bit of a kick in the butt. But, yeah, I don't hate buying Manu, but I think this week someone like Alex Johnson would be a better buy.
Yep. Moving on to the final game of the round, Dragons v the Bulldogs. The Dragons have Tautau Moga out with a shoulder injury, and Max Fianai comes in on the wing. Tyrrell Sloan, you mentioned him before. Look, he's up and down, but geez, when he's on, and he was sensational yesterday.
Yeah, he's just loaded full of attacking stats, and whenever they score points, he seems to be around the ball. So, yeah, he's not the best option going around because he can have a super low score, but he's got a negative 36 break even at 464k and plays the first buy round. So there's a lot of positives there for Sloan. He has gone up a little bit in price already, but he's looking at going up even further. So I definitely am looking into that. Someone else that I heard mentioned throughout the day was Jack de Belin at 523k as a dual position with all the front row carnage that's been going on. Not a terrible option to go and get you a solid 50 to 60 points on a weekly basis because he plays decent minutes.
Yep. I've got a lot of questions today in the blog about Jack Bird as well. And he looks in some pretty serious form, and he's a guy I definitely want to get in before round 13. It won't be this week, but he's certainly on my radar. You mentioned Tyrrell Sloan before. He's got a pretty good matchup against the Bulldogs, who are decimated, let's face it. Plus, they've made some changes of their own with Kyle Flanagan dropped and the prodigal son, Josh Reynolds, coming into the halves. No Oluwapu, so he is in the reserves. So there is a chance that the young gun Oluwapu, who apparently is the next big thing in rugby league, could come in for a debut. It might be on the bench. It might be at number 6. We don't know yet.
Yeah, he's obviously a wait and see, and we get to have a look at him play a few games before we even have to consider that, really. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to actually seeing him play in the NRL just because of all the hype about him. But, yeah, at the moment, it's purely just an NRL joy moment rather than a SuperCoach one. We'll wait and see for SuperCoach.
Right, I'm going to take a couple of questions to the end of the show. Katoa for Brimson. He was really good on his return from injury on the weekend. It's risky. it is risky. I don't think I'd quite go there, but I can see the appeal.
It is risky, and they're not going to play. He's not going to play the bye round either. So he's someone that I do like, and I have owned in different stints here and there, and has done well for me. But yeah, I think I'm mostly looking at guys that are going to play round 13 at this stage, and he's not going to be there.
Best, what have we got here? Lots of chat about Terrell Sloan and Alex Johnson. So, Cheekham, there's a question about him. He's back in the starting side now with the injury to Kaloa Matani. Did he play there?
Yeah, that's right. I can't remember.
He was last. I know he was last week. Jacob Host is another guy who's sort of fallen out of favour as well. I don't quite know what the rotation is going forward there at the Rabbitohs, so I'm tending to avoid it.
Did he get hooked after like 7 minutes or something on the weekend?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that was 17, random.
I think. Yeah.
Oh, 17. Yeah. Anyway, that's still a bit weird for an edge forward to get hooked to that early point and not come back until the last 15, 20 as well. I wouldn't be touching that just due to the unknown.
And Troy Vickers is asking about Egan Butcher. He was really popular by at the start of the year. Pretty good in the Anzac Day clash. Would you go him as a cash grab for Tohu Harris?
I started with him and he did not much for me. Yeah. So I wouldn't be doing that. I think with Satili and Angus both sitting there on the bench, there's the very real reality that Butcher ends up back on the bench at some point pretty soon. So, yeah, I think that's a bit too risky.
And then the final question, or it's not really a question, but Crichton is a good cash grab. He'll be goal kicking against the Tigers. It's not the worst call ever, but I think there probably are more important things this weekend.
Yeah, again, it's a buy around thing. He's got a low break even. He's kicking goals. He's playing the Tigers. It all sounds great. I'm not a big fan of Crichton though. Yeah. he can pull out a 15 to 20 point score quite easily on any week, even against poor opposition. So that scares me too much. Absolutely,
and I reckon he's probably cost Brian Tu'o a couple of tries this year as well by going himself. That's for sure.
Yeah, as has Tago to Taruva.
Yeah, bit of glue hands in that team, and now we've got Tyrone Peachy in there this week to keep that going on.
Yes.
Big thanks to Kane Anderson for coming on at late notice with the switch of Team List Tuesday to Wednesday and earlier in the day. Great to have you on. Good luck to everyone over the weekend. Hopefully you can get a 17 on the park. We'll catch you for the Game Day podcast tomorrow, 11 a.m. See you then.